Good evening. I'm Scott Davis, class of 77. I'm a management consultant at KPMG, where my offices of my client were at 130 Liberty Street, right across from the South Tower along the southern periphery of the World Trade Center complex. And I guess my overwhelming feeling tonight is that I just feel profoundly lucky to be here and grateful to be alive and to be able to come back here, even under these circumstances. I never thought that 28 years ago, when I took Art 101 and 102 in one of these seats back here, that I'd be here, in this form. But I'm glad to be here. I emerged from the subway at Wall Street just before 9, and like some of the others, saw crowds of people and burning paper raining down, and looked up and saw that there was a fire in the North Tower in number 1, and had no good idea as to why it happened, because coming from the east you couldn't see that there had been a plane that had crashed in, I think, on the north face of the building. All I saw was that there was a bad fire, and I called home on my cell phone and said to my wife, "You better look at the TV. I think there's been a fire, and people are saying that a plane crashed into the World Trade Center." So we did that, and I left a message on our answering machine, and we still have that message of me, leaving that with the sirens and all that in the background. It's sort of a strange thing to have on your answering machine, but I'm not quite ready to erase it yet. But so I walked into my building a couple blocks away, and thinking that it was just a bad fire, and I went up to my 10th floor office, which is on the north side of the building that faces Liberty Street, and looked up, and I saw a big fire in the South Tower, and being confused, thinking that I'd seen a fire in the North Tower, still not knowing anything about airplanes or terrorist attacks or anything like this. We had a couple of announcements in our building which said that our building was fine, and that there was no need to do anything just yet, and that we would be notified as to the appropriate thing to do. And 10 or 15 minutes later, there was a first signal to evacuate. In the meantime, I was looking out and looking up, and over this frankly interesting set of events. My colleagues asked if I was ready to go, and I said, well, not quite yet. I still had some things to pull together, and I made a couple more phone calls. And they returned saying that they were told to go back up in the building, that it was safer at that point to stay in the building, because there was still mostly paper debris which was coming down. And at some point, I don't remember when, I just still have no idea, the South Tower, it must have been hit while I was coming up in the elevator, but that hole was much larger. It must have been 5 stories high and almost the full width of the building. But then we were asked to evacuate again, and I was asked if I was ready to go, and I said, yeah, I'll be right there. And as I was gathering my things together, I heard the sound of a dumpster being pulled across the asphalt, together with the sound of thunder. And I looked up and out and saw the building starting to come down, the South Tower, and thinking that I just could not believe it, because I was convinced that while there were these major fires, that it was the building was not going to come down. Well, obviously it did. Unfortunately, I was able to dive to an adjacent office. The lights went out, the windows came blowing in, I felt a whoosh of cool air, and the sprinklers came on, ceiling tiles came down, and all this smoke and dust was really like powdered concrete and plaster, and that's why it took so long to settle, I think, because it was so dense. But I had a lighter which I lit, and I could kind of barely see where I was in the office. Unfortunately, an emergency light came on, and so I could see that the only way to get out, the door to exit our offices out to the hallway and the fire escape was jammed shut with debris, and the wall was kind of tipping down at a 45-degree angle, so I had to literally climb up the wall and hop down into the hallway and make my way around the debris. And there were about 6 other people on the elevator landing there, and we were all covered with this white dust and so forth. And we made it down the stairwell and into a building management office where there were a bunch of other people that were latecomers in evacuating like I was. And we had to wait for about 15 minutes for the dust to settle, and then the sun returned because it was literally pitch black before then. And then I walked down the street through 3 inches of this thick dust and so forth and into Battery Park. And then the second building collapsed, and then there was another whoosh of dust down the street, and I walked past the Staten Island Ferry and up through the seaport, and then hitchhiked up the FDR Drive to Midtown to my office, and made some calls to try and locate some missing people, and everyone in our firm turned out to be okay. But then I walked up toward Hunter College and caught a subway up to 96th Street, and got home, and I was asked, well, why are you home early with all this dust on top of you? I said, well, it's been kind of a long morning, but no, in any event, it was an experience that, no one will forget, and again, I come back to the, thankfulness of being here and being safe.